Getting the old 350 ready for shipment. Going to put it in storage. Not really going to use a whole lot off of it. You can see we put a different distributor in there just for storage. Here's that Pro billet distributor. We got some big plans for this. We're going to do some updates to this car. Probably 3 or 4 pretty substantial ones, which should be interesting. We saved the heater control valve. And I had an extra set of stock valve covers. Putting them on here. I think we could shine up these Edelbrock ones if we wanted to. And they look a little bigger than the stock ones. So I believe the motor we're putting into it has Harlan Sharp rocker arms on it. Just has the standard pedestal type rocker arm scheme. The pedestal type setup was pretty good for stock. But as valve jobs get done to the head, the valve would start sinking into the head deeper and deeper, and you have to shim the pedestal up to compensate. So the motor that's going in it has a fully adjustable valve train. It's probably worth mentioning this does have an Edelbrock carb on it. I really don't have a need for it right now. And when we do the AC, I believe the new motor has ARP studs in it. So we might have to get some different type studs for the AC bracketry. And we might have to use some of these pulleys and bracketry out the front here. But that's a ways down the road. Really not much of a mess on this engine removal. A couple small bags of labeled bolts and the mystery hardware, I always have that. But just a couple pieces, and the rest of it's all on the engine, left intact. Probably clean these up and paint them and put them in storage because it's going to be a while before the stuff goes back on the car. That drive shaft there I don't even think we're going to use. Nor the radiator, I think it has a hole towards the bottom. I'm just going to film the location of this e-brake cable for my own knowledge, but we've got these hooks on this front oval on both sides. And then the hook and the cross member I think went there. These cars are drilled with 2 sets of holes for that cross member, and we'll be sliding it back when you put that Turbo 400 in.
As we're getting this thing cleaned up, we thought we'd start off with all the crappiest stuff first. It's all oily and stuff underneath. And this whole tray, we're gonna get this all off. But before we can store this stuff, he's actually putting it in his house in a bedroom. So he doesn't want crusty, greasy parts on carpet. So we gotta clean these all up and then prime them, paint them, and then they'll be sitting there waiting for reassembly. And we won't be stepping over all this stuff. There's always a space limitation. No matter how big you have a shop, you wish you had it bigger. Because there's nothing worse than having stuff fixed up and all of a sudden a cylinder tips over and hits a car door or something, you know. So we're gonna get this all cleaned up. And you can see this is a vulnerable piece because you're in a location. This is just to keep airflow under the car, making it go through the radiator and stuff. But you can pull up close on a parking lot and hit one of them concrete things and dent something. You go through a ditch and it's going to be the part that hits. This thing's sitting so high right now, I think we could go over a double stack barrier bump stuff. But we're going to get this all straightened out before we end up painting it. You'll see little dingers here. This is rolled over. You see a V in here. So we want this to all look straight. When this thing's all painted and clean, it'll look brand new, like it was just coming off the assembly line. So after scraping this thing, it actually changed shape. I didn't even realize it looked like this, but I bet you by the time I end up getting all this crud off of here, it'll take a ½ pound off. And this is a heavy item. I said if we made this thing out of aluminum, they'd make one called G-Force or something. This is a heavy, bulky piece of iron.
There was a dual exhaust option in this car. It may have just been for the cross member. I don't know.
You can see these right here. If this was straight and you put dual exhaust on it, it would really be hanging. There are a lot of guys will just cut it right here, take a piece of pipe, cut the pipe in half, weld it in between here, and then you got a curve for the tube to go through. Dual exhaust is way better than single exhaust. And when you ended up getting the cars after 75, they had to, crisscross under this pipe on the driver's side is heating up the engine and tranny, and then it goes to a catalytic converter and comes out, and it really dogged the car out. Another situation where you get a car from California, just makes life more easier for you. This thing had a coating of oil all over it. There was some exposed place, had dirt and fuzzy rust, but otherwise when you come up to it, it's, you know, like a brand new piece of metal that was formed out. You can sand out some gouges and then prime and paint it. We've got the parts that go on underneath here. We took all the emergency brake out. We're gonna take the shifter off, and then we can clean underneath here. And then we're getting rid of all the dirty stuff so that later on, when you're doing body work and stuff, then you won't have, you know, you should always mask everything off still, but we're doing the dirty work first.
Gonna get these shifter bolts. So we took that makeshift console out, and the radio had like this base mounting plate, and there's a bunch of drywall screws holding it in. We'll get that out of there.
Did you see these?
So that's first, I guess. Then you got the lockout, but you can't pull it from there, which pisses me off. But from here you can pull it up.
Oh.
It's just kind of annoying having a shifter like this.
Well, I was in a car one time. We were in this beautiful 67 Barracuda. It wasn't a fastback, it was a notchback, and it was a built-up engineering. And we come into this guy's driveway, and we pick a guy up, and all of a sudden he's backing out. He didn't watch, and a car's coming, and there was no way he could take the turn without hitting. He wanted to get back up the driveway, and he's sitting there ratcheting, and the guy wasn't letting off that was coming at us, and he finally gets it into drive, and then we gassed it back up the driveway. I thought, that is the stupidest shifter I've ever seen. But in racing, there'd be impossibility for you to accidentally hit neutral or hit reverse, and it's got its function. But like I said, on the street, just use a stock shifter. On a race car that requires rules that you can't accidentally go into reverse, then it would have its place.
What's on the other side there? There's a spring on the other side of it. I'm gonna go back to all the ones. That's the deal breaker right there.
I wonder how they got that to do that. It must be the lock with these over on the other side interfering with that. Somebody did a lot of thinking when they made it.
I'm sure if you get used to it, it's just fine, but we like that stock ratcheting GM shifter, so we're trying to fit that into an Oldsmobile console and see how that works out.
Lift up on it. So we're just eliminating weight today. And look at this thing.
How's the look underneath there? Oh, it's not all rusted out. That's a good thing.
Well, drop the tank and there's no build sheet on the tank. So you said the Lansing was notorious for that?
Yeah, I believe this car was assembled in Lansing, Michigan, and apparently they didn't put too many build sheets in their car, if any.
As far as anybody that's taken off a gas tank from Wisconsin, a lot of times you take the straps off and the two are connected to each other, and you pull the strap down, and all of a sudden you got pinhole leaks all underneath where the gas tank straps are. It's got mud and dirt on it, but this thing will clean up really nice, and we're thinking about putting an electric fuel pump that goes in here. This is nice, totally solid. Usually the gas tank rusts out and the floor pan in between because a bunch of crud gets stuck in between here. It stays wet all the time. This is solid.
We're going to look at a fuel system someone else did here. We're going to work on a Cutlass fuel delivery system. What do you got here?
So, alright, so took the stock tank, drilled a hole in it, put in a nice 10 AN. God, I hope that's what it is. I'm right now. Yeah, that's what it is. 10 AN, welded a bung onto the thing, bringing it over to 2 fuel filters. You get a 10 micron, then it goes into the A1000 pump, going into a 100 micron for fuel injection. And then that, you look over here, it's got 2 lines basically. One goes to feed, the other one's a return. You can see the return, it's kind of tough to see.
What do you call this type of line right here?
The rubber, what is that? It's just a rubber fuel line that you get at typically get at like circle track racing supply places.
And you just heat it up the ends and it pushed on a barb fitting and that's it?
Yep, push on a barb fitting. It's real nice actually. You just I usually put a little sill glide in there on the fitting itself on the barb to help it along. But then yeah, a little heat gun, put a little heat on the end, and it slides over easier, but it's still a rough journey.
Did you consider putting a sump on this tank?
I did, but I had previous tank that I welded on it and had a leak even though I checked it with water. So I figured just welding that little nipple on the tank was good enough. Pump itself is rated for 100 psi and I believe 1,000 horsepower naturally aspirated. It's an A1000. A lot of people have had good luck with them, but I like it because it allowed me to run a carburetor and then go to EFI later on. So when I bought that pump almost 20 years ago now already, it worked perfect for my application.
So how much PSI do you got it set at right now?
For carburetor, 7-ish, you know, 7.5, somewhere around there.
And then when you go to fuel injection, you're just going to crank up your regulator and it's going to compensate?
Yep, crank the regulator so it starts, it goes up to about 44 PSI.
So we're looking at the regulator now. So you got your feed line, your return line, one to the carb, and what's that other one there?
So that's a boost sensor. The vacuum line's for boost.
Oh, it's a boost specific regulator?
Yeah. So the ones without boost just don't have that nipple on the left side there, top left there, with the black vacuum hose going to it.
Yeah, we're kind of talking about the ignition on the Cutlass too. We're going to run a coil similar to this. We're considering a 6AL-2 programmable box. I don't know if we're going to use that or not yet though. Oh, it's pretty loud.
Yeah.
How's it?
Ones are quieter.
How's that inside the car?
Barely noticeable. But you know, you go to a car show and you flip the ignition on first, and then this thing fires up. Everybody around you hears it.